All right, guys, back here on Southeastern 16 with Chase Robinson. We continue our look at the SEC football schedules for the 2024 season. We're going through game by game, sharing some thoughts on how it could go for all of these teams in the SEC. And we've made it to the Vanderbilt Commodores, and we'll take a look at what Clark Lee's team can expect heading into the season. Before we do that, let's talk about our friends at BetOnline, number one source for all your sports betting needs this season. They've got baseball, golf, soccer, UFC, MMA, boxing. It's all there. Every stat, every matchup, live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head to the online casino, get on a game of blackjack or poker plus 150 slots games. There's more than 150. Check them all out there. To do that, you can head to the website today, get on the action. Use that promo code BELIEVE, B-L-E-A-V, for your 50% welcome or free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. That's BELIEVE, B-L-E-A-V. Bet online, the game starts here. All right, Chase, the Vanderbilt Commodores. We know a program that is trying to make strides, and it's been tough to do. And boy, when we look at this schedule, you're going to realize that it could be even tougher for the Commodores this season because it's not exactly an easy one. And you start things off with Virginia Tech, which is, I think for Vanderbilt, it's good to have a game like this because, I feel like there have been some seasons where Vanderbilt has kind of had a lot of games at home that leave a lot to be desired, but at least this is one where you're playing an ACC team here at Virginia Tech. You start the season off. It's on ESPN, early kick, all those things. So, as always, when you're talking about, I think, this program, these are the kind of games that, Vanderbilt's expectation is not to make the college football playoff. It's to get to a bowl game. And these are the kind of games that if you're going to get there, you have to find a way probably to win, but hey, this will not exactly be easy against the Hokies in week one.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you want to start the season off with a win. You get it at home in Nashville. We haven't seen these two teams play since I think before 1990. I mean, it's been a while since the Commodores and the Hokies have played, but I think this is an interesting game to start things off with. And can Vanderbilt find a way to win? I think a lot of questions about Vandy at this point, whereas we're recording this in the summer, a lot of transfers in, a new quarterback, some new guys on the staff. So it's hard to tell, kind of what this team will look like when they hit the field on August 31st. But interesting matchup with Virginia Tech to start things off. Virginia Tech has not been, an extreme powerhouse in recent years. So maybe this is a game Vandy can go out win and start the season off on a good note because, like you mentioned, there's not a lot of breaks when you look up and down this Vanderbilt schedule.
No, there's not. Now, I will say Virginia Tech being kind of a popular, certainly preseason top 25 team, I think for a lot of publications, Phil still has them at number 16 heading into the season. So if you're looking at this and thinking, all right, maybe this is just another 7-6 team like Virginia Tech was last year. Seems like the expectations are a bit higher, so it will be a challenge, I think, for the Commodores here to start things off. Now, if we go beyond that, then you have Alcorn State at Georgia State. Boy, I will tell you right now that knowing Vanderbilt fans, that game at Georgia State on September the 14th will scare the living daylights out of them because these are the kind of games I think that you look at and you're thinking, all right, I mean, for starters, I know there are going to be some fans saying, why are we playing this game? But at the same time, you have a lot more to lose than you do to win. And so, listen, Chase, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but this is one of those where, again, if we're looking at the schedule, it's like, okay, you'd feel a little bit better if this game was at home, but it's like a road game against Georgia State. And I don't know. I think Vanderbilt wins both these games, but listen, like I said, it's a fan base that already feels kind of beat up, and this feels tricky. This road game on September 14th against Georgia State.
Yeah, I mean, you don't see this a lot. You don't see an SEC team traveling to a Sun Belt team very often. But here you go, and I think Georgia State's looking at this game as hey, let's beat an SEC team on our home field, and so yeah, this could be an interesting game. It is tricky anytime you go on the road, and Vanderbilt lost all of their road games last year, and so that's on their mind going into this one. Even if it's against a team like Georgia State, I think that's a program that is on the rise a bit. But interesting to see Vanderbilt travel down to Atlanta, to the old Turner Field, to take on Georgia State.
Well, the good news is Georgia State, according to Phil Steele, and I've looked at some other publications as well, popularly picked in the 120s out of 134 teams. So there you go. So therefore, should be a position where things should be okay for the Commodores. Let's just put it that way. I think it should work out on that. All right, now we keep going, and this is where things get interesting, I think, because as we said, I think it's fair to assume Vanderbilt should be at least 2-1 in these first 3 games. Because I bring up all the stuff about Georgia State, but Vanderbilt should be a better team than Georgia State and win that game. But then it's like, look out, because from here you go to Missouri, and then you just keep looking down the schedule, and you don't really want to keep looking down the schedule. But Missouri is a preseason top 10 team. Alabama's preseason top 10 team. You got to go to Kentucky, and I know we're kind of lumping these together, Chase, but it's might as well, because these are really tough games to open SEC play against 3 teams that, you mentioned even Kentucky. Kentucky's a team that may be undervalued a little bit by some people heading into the season. Missouri and Alabama will not be. These are just ones that, at least for Vanderbilt, you'll be able to kind of have a gauge of where you are from that in that Virginia Tech game. But hey, if you want to know where you stand in the SEC, it's not going to take long, because these are just 3 pretty brutal matchups here.
Yeah, they are, and I mentioned that Vandy lost all 6 road games last year, and so you look at these road games, starting with this one at Missouri. That's not how you want to start off SEC play, I think, on the road. Vanderbilt has lost 13 straight SEC road openers, and so they also look at that, and it calls for concern again against a really good Missouri team. And so you kind of start out, I feel like, if you're Vanderbilt, thinking you're behind the 8 ball a little bit as you look at the schedule. But yeah, that's tough to have at Missouri, and then you do get to host Alabama, but again, another top 10 team at this point. I feel like they'll be looking at Alabama's schedule. So Missouri, Alabama, and then against Kentucky, who I think could have a kind of a breakthrough year there in Lexington, based off kind of where their schedule sits. And so this is an interesting one. Alabama will be the first SEC home game for Vanderbilt, but they've also lost their last 12 SEC home openers there in Nashville as well. So the numbers, I'll say this, the numbers are not in favor of Vanderbilt. But, having this one at home, again, they'll learn a lot about kind of where this program is right off the bat against Missouri, Alabama, and then, like you said, at Kentucky. Kentucky will be coming off a bye week heading into this one against Vanderbilt as well. And so interesting kind of the way the schedule lays out for Vanderbilt. Again, there's not a lot of breaks when you look at it.
No, not at all. I guess you could say there is a little bit of a break against Ball State on October 19th. Ball State's another team picked in the 120s. It seemingly got a lot of people if you look at kind of the composite rankings out there. So, and we've seen Vanderbilt and Ball State, I think, actually play. I don't know, it was last year, year before. We've seen these 2 teams play in recent years. And then it keeps going, right? Because then it's like, okay, you got to go to Texas. The welcome to the SEC, Texas. Or wait, they host Texas, I'm sorry. But still, Texas is a team that fully expects to be in the hunt for a national championship. So if you're kind of doing that counter so far, I think at least to this point, you're talking about 3 teams, and maybe 4, whether you think that's Kentucky or Virginia Tech, that feel like, hey, we're at least either college football playoff locks or right there knocking on the door. And of course, Texas is certainly one of those teams as well.
Yeah, and we've mentioned it before. Vanderbilt does have a 8-3 series lead over the Longhorns. You have to go all the way back before the Great Depression to find that, to find the last time they've played. But Vanderbilt does have the lead in that series. But this is a Texas team that is going to be eyes locked in on that college football playoff at this point. And yeah, it's tough, and for Vanderbilt to have this, because you look up and down the schedule, there's no Arkansas or Mississippi State or teams like that Vanderbilt's used to playing, and had some really good games with. But yeah, this is tough. Texas, and then you go on the road to Auburn. Of course, you played Auburn last year up in Nashville, and now you have to travel down to Auburn. So two tough back-to-back games here, and then you see that South Carolina game as well before you get another off game. So this stretch right here is really tough, but also important for Vanderbilt to get some wins when they can. Maybe surprise some people. You got a couple of them at home. You got South Carolina there in Nashville. But yeah, tough road games, I think. And we know how Vanderbilt has fared in road games. But yeah, this stretch right here is so tough for Vanderbilt, but also really important to see if they can find some wins in here.
Yeah, and I think you really do circle that South Carolina game as kind of that one that's like, as we said, if you're getting to a bowl game, if you want to be right there, like this is the game, you have to win this game. Like I don't think there's any doubt about it. Look, if things go south for Auburn, if Auburn's not what we think they could be, could Vanderbilt make that interesting? It's all dependent on Vanderbilt, I think, because it's really just seeing can they take a step forward. We just don't know. We won't know until we see how competitive they are, or if they're giving themselves an opportunity to win games against some of these teams we just mentioned. Like, can they be competitive against these top 10 type teams? And that'll kind of sell you on where you think they can be once they get to November, which, again, I'm looking at the rest of the schedule. We know, like, winning at LSU is going to be difficult. Beating Tennessee is going to be difficult. So if you're looking at the games that you're like, okay, how do we get to that path to 6? I mean, South Carolina at home, at Auburn, which I just think by that time, I don't know if that's going to be necessarily, one that you feel as strongly about. And we mentioned, like, you got to beat the Ball States, you got to beat the Georgia States, the Alcorn States. I mean, look, that's where, though, Chase, the path gets a lot easier if for some way you pull off that week 1 upset against Virginia Tech, have a chance to start 3-0. You feel like you're going to get a 4th win against Ball State. And then it's like, hey, you just got to find 2 somewhere. It's still going to be difficult, but at least, though, at that point, you're thinking, all right, if we beat South Carolina, then we just got to find 1 somewhere. Yeah. And I know, listen, there are going to be people who look at this and they're going to be like, come on, guys. But still, I mean, if you're trying to craft sort of the perfect scenario for Vanderbilt, there are wins on the table here. Like, there are games that Vanderbilt will and should win. But it's just those SEC games, as always, that are just – that room for error, as we always talk about. There's just not a lot, especially when you're playing this many top 15, top 20 type teams like they have on the schedule.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. I mean, it's not often you look at a schedule and say the whole season almost hinges on what you do in the opener. But I think you really could say that for Vanderbilt this year. If you get this win over Virginia Tech to start, and then you mentioned you get a win over Alcorn State, Georgia State, Ball State, and you're in a decent position then. You got 4 wins, and yeah, you try to find 1 or 2, 1 or 2 more in SEC play. But I think a lot hangs on what happens at Virginia Tech, and you win that game, you do have a little more confidence. Your offense is working a little better, and so yeah, I think a lot hangs on that because. And that's a game you want because it's going to be hard to find wins when you look up and down the schedule. And so if you can start off the season with a win, that makes things much better.
Yep. And I mean, there are going to be some other games that Vanderbilt's just going to look at and say, hey, we may have to take our lumps in some of these, but you got to make the most of some of these opportunities. And as always, I think it's the same scenario. You win the games, you have to win the games you're supposed to win, and then you just have to pull an upset or 2 somewhere along the way. So we'll see if the Commodores can do that. A very, tough schedule. Not a lot of, let up time for them to be able to, again, just get through the grind of the SEC. But we'll see how it plays out for Clark Lee's team heading into the season. But as always, guys, we appreciate you watching. Check out all the other schedule previews we've done here on the channel. They're all up actually now. So we've got schedule previews for all 16 teams. You can check that out. And of course, be sure to subscribe button, hit the like button on your way out. Check out all of our baseball and basketball stuff as well. And we appreciate you watching as always. And we'll talk to you again here soon at Southeastern 16.